Oh, ChatGPT dis, here's your story translated into Singapore English, preserving the emotional tone, natural flow, and cinematic rhythm, but adapted to sound authentic and fluent to an English-speaking Singaporean audience, neutral enough for YouTube international reach too. The girl waited at the same place every day. Rain or shine, she was always there. In the same simple clothes, with the same distant stare, and that same silence that somehow said more than any word ever could. People walked past in a hurry, eyes averted, pretending not to see. It was as if she had become part of the scenery, forgotten by the world. But there was something strange about her, something that made anyone who met her gaze feel a sharp ache in their chest, even for just a second. It was as if her eyes carried a quiet plea for help, a secret no one dared to uncover. She looked about 9, maybe 10 years old. Small, thin, her hair always tied up in a messy bun. Every day she sat on the same step at the corner, holding an old doll missing one eye and wearing a torn dress. The scene repeated itself day after day. Those who passed by got used to seeing her. Some said she was an orphan. Others believed she had run away from home. No one really knew, but everyone preferred to imagine rather than ask. It was easier to ignore the mystery than to get involved. Until one cold autumn morning, a man decided to stop. He was the kind who noticed small things, even if he pretended not to. He worked at a small grocery shop down the street, and every day he saw the girl sitting there. For weeks he had thought of speaking to her, but always backed out at the last second, maybe afraid of the answer. But that day, something changed. Maybe it was the cold, or maybe it was the way she shivered without a coat. He took a deep breath, looked around, and slowly approached. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly, as if afraid to scare her away. The girl said nothing. She just clutched the doll tightly to her chest, eyes fixed on the ground. "What's your name?" He tried again, kneeling to her level. Silence. Only the sound of distant traffic and the cold wind brushing their faces. He took off his coat and placed it gently over her shoulders. She didn't move, but she didn't push it away either. Then, for the first time, she looked up at him. And in that look, the man felt something strange. It wasn't fear. It was as if she was trying to tell him something. Without words. A plea, a memory, a scream trapped deep inside. He stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to understand that silent message, until a loud car horn broke his thoughts. When he turned back to her, the girl was gone. All that remained was the doll, lying on the wet ground, its face smeared with dirt. He looked around, called out, searched, but she was nowhere. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Confused, he picked up the doll, wiped it clean with his sleeve, and brought it home. Maybe she'd return the next day to look for it. But she never did. Days turned into weeks, and she was never seen again. Yet that look, those eyes, stayed in his mind, haunting him. Weeks passed. The girl never came back. Then one night, while closing up the shop, something caught his eye. At the far end of the street, beneath the streetlight, stood a small shadow, still watching him. His heart pounded. He couldn't see the face, but the size, the posture, the presence. It was her. He took a few cautious steps forward, but the shadow retreated and disappeared. A chill ran through his spine. He hurried home, telling himself it was just exhaustion. At home, he placed the doll on the table. The light flickered. For a moment, he swore he saw her reflection in the window. The same eyes, the same silence. For the first time, fear took over. He grabbed the phone, called the police, and explained everything. They checked, but no child matching that description had been reported missing. None at all. That's when he decided to investigate on his own. The next morning, he went back to the corner. He asked around, the bakery, the shopkeepers, the old residents. Everyone remembered her. "Yes, the little girl with the doll always sitting there," they said. But when he asked who she was, silence followed. No one knew. No one had ever seen where she came from or where she went. One elderly man who had lived there for decades said quietly, "That girl, she appears every few years, always the same way, and then she disappears again." Those words wouldn't leave his mind. Every few years. What did that mean? That night, restless, he went home and picked up the doll. Without really knowing why, he decided to open the back of it. Inside, he found something small, carefully folded, an old photograph. It showed a young woman holding a girl identical to the one at the corner. On the back, a name was scribbled, Lena, 1993. He froze. 1993. That girl would be a grown woman by now. But how could she still look exactly the same 30 years later? Curiosity turned into obsession. He searched through old city records and archives, digging through newspaper clippings. Days later, he found it, a faded article. Girl disappears at the corner of Olmo Street in 1993. Witnesses say she waited there every day. The photo in the article was the same as the one hidden in the doll. His heart nearly stopped. It was her. The same girl, still waiting for 30 years. He felt a shiver crawl up his spine. It couldn't be real. Yet something inside him whispered that there was a reason behind it all, and he had to find out what it was. The next night, he went back to the corner. The street was empty, wind howling, the streetlight flickering weakly. He stood still, staring at the step. Then she appeared, out of nowhere, sitting as always, holding the same doll, the one that was now in his house. His body froze. His breath caught. She lifted her head and looked straight at him. Those same eyes, that same silence. Slowly, she pointed at him, then at the doll in his hands. Shaking, he whispered, Lena. Is that you? The girl nodded. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then she murmured, barely audible, He never came. The man's heart sank. Who didn't come? He asked. But before she could answer, a cold wind blew through the street, and she vanished right before his eyes. In the place where she had sat was a crumpled piece of paper. He picked it up and unfolded it. It read, Wait for me. From that night on, he was never the same. Every day he left flowers on that step. Somehow, whenever he did, a strange warmth filled his chest, as if she was still there, watching. Months later, the grocery closed down. He decided to move, to start over in another city. But on the night before he left, he looked out the window and saw her again. The small shadow at the corner, still and quiet, watching. He smiled softly. And for the first time, he whispered, You can go now, Lena. He's here. The next morning, neighbors found him asleep in his armchair, a gentle smile on his face, and the old doll resting on his lap. On the step at the corner, there was a single red flower and a message written in childlike handwriting. Thank you for waiting with me. And if you've stayed till the end, tell me in the comments, do you believe some people remain bound to promises that were never fulfilled? Leave a like, subscribe, and share this story. Maybe it'll find someone who's still waiting too.